I want to salute in particular Mavuso Msimang. He is the living embodiment of the ANC of our parents and our grandparents. Indeed, he is the living embodiment of our ANC. I have sought his counsel and advice and will continue to do so in the hope that he will join our movement and guide us to a better place for all South Africans.
We are aware that there is a new initiative through a political party that was unveiled, I think, today, which is led by Roger Jardine. This is a well-organized and funded campaign by big capital in our country. They are hard at work recruiting some of the ANC veterans, and they are funding them. We know now that a number of ANC veterans like Mefi Murobe and many others have been approached one by one, and then they have been given money. Mavuso Msimang, before he left, and when we made a call that they must stop decampaigning the ANC, he said on Mandela's day that Mandela will not be happy of ANC government.
I've just been shown a video clip of Fikile Mbulula, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, addressing an ANC rally somewhere. I think it was yesterday. In this clip, he accuses me of having accepted a bribe in order to join the party of Mr. Roger Jardine.
Well, here I am, sitting in the home of the famous man himself, Mavuso Msimang, to have a chat about, firstly, his resignation from the African National Congress, the rumours that he is about to become a politician and Roger Jardine's Change Starts Now platform, and the harm that his reputation may have suffered as a result of the ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbulula's alleged claim that he took a bribe to hitch his wagon to Roger Jardine's movement. Now, Mavuso, as I understand it, it was never your intention to go public with your resignation, as you were hoping that the ANC would respond and that there would be a sincere effort to persuade them that you really wanted to ensure that at the very minimum there was accountability with respect to people that had been named by the Zondo Commission, and that no ANC member implicated in corruption through the Zondo Commission would appear on an ANC list any time. But it seems that someone in the Secretary General's office made mischief by leaking that letter. Have I summed it up correctly?
I think it's a very good summary. The leak has to have happened in the Secretary General's office, and I really don't necessarily say it was the Secretary General himself who did it. I sent my email of resignation to the Secretary General and also to his PA. Now, I did that on advice because since it was an email, there was a possibility that the Secretary General might not see it early enough. This is something that could be subjected to some kind of audit, forensic, because people would then say, well, wait a minute, how do we know you're telling the truth? I think that I would welcome that as well. But what messed this whole thing up and resulted in me going to the media was that within hours of my sending the letter to the SG's office, it was circulating on WhatsApp media, ANC ones. I had not told the veterans that I was resigning. I had meant to do that after I had sent the letter to the SG and gotten a reaction. But I would then let them know because they would not have been able to persuade me to go back, but also it would just generate discussions that were not necessary. So I go to the media in response to calls that I verify that the statement attributed to me is actually mine. So I did not take the statement to the media and said, here, I have resigned South Africa, you must know that. I really did want to have an input into the narrative of my going away, because it was floating all over. Now I'm told by midnight of the 6th of December, 6/7, it was already trending.
It is. Now, the Secretary General, Mr. Mbulula, is now saying that procedurally you should have put your resignation through your branch, and that involved your branch in the process, and that would have then sort of filtered up, because the ANC is supposedly a bottom-up, member-driven organization.
Yes, I'm not in the habit of resigning. I must say I just was not familiar with that procedure. But if you look at the contents of my resignation letter, really what I wanted was to provoke, to trigger a decision. This thing would not have gone out before I had received a reaction from the Secretary General. I think even an acceptance that we've accepted your resignation. But once it was out, of course, I reacted in the manner that I did. But yes, the branch, I did know about that. I really did know, and I respect the branch people. I would have found a way of giving them perhaps a brief letter to say, I'm resigning, give this to the SG. I don't know really in practical terms, in terms of what I wanted to get from the senior people. That's the level anyway. I'm also a member, by the way, of the, I was a member of the Veterans League. It's Deputy President, and we're in pretty close proximity with the Secretary General, the top 7 people. It really didn't occur until somebody highlighted that procedurally this was wrong, which I accept. I didn't know about it.
Well, I mean, obviously, the whole point about the Veterans League is you're a group of elders.
Sure.
And in fact, Fikile Mbulula does say in the rest of his speech that he gave on Sunday that we have respect for the elders, we do acknowledge them. So from that point of view, surely there should be some acknowledgement, the fact that you were a part of an eldership group, that you were seeking to actually now send a shot across the bows and say, listen, I'm absolutely serious about the fact that we are going to, I suppose, impoverish the ANC further, or disable it as a legitimate political party if we don't clean up our act. So I get the sense that this was a kind of an ultimatum.
Yeah, a subtle one, if you will. The issue of the people who appeared before the Zondo Commission, and other commissions, by the way, and people who had criminal records, has been discussed between the veterans and the top 7 through the office of Mbulula. That's been ongoing. And in fact, the frustration is that as the elections were drawing nearer and the issue is not being decided on, although we put it in, I think, seriously, comfortably 3 months, as soon as we finished our conference, strategic conference in, was it September or before September? That's a resolution that was taken there. And all our resolutions were public knowledge in the first place, but also conveyed to the leadership of the ANC. But I just saw no movements. Sometimes the thing is on the agenda. You are told that it's there. For some reason, it doesn't get discussed. And time was drawing close. And before long, somebody might say, we didn't find time to do this. And so these tainted people are on the list. I didn't want that. And I just thought, maybe this is a plan to do that, because I just thought there was some the lack of urgency suggested a reluctance to do this.
Well, there has clearly been some sense of strategy on your part, because I can recall you were at Kali Hanekom's memorial when he died a couple of months ago, and I was quite surprised to see you pop up there as a representative from the Veterans League, sending a very strong signal.
There is now a coalition created by our almost criminal negligence. But I'm saying this coalition will not come anywhere near the victory line at election time. if, and only if, even at this late hour, the ANC gives it to them. All the ANC needs to do, if it heeds the call by its veterans, is to act definitively, decisively, and remove, as a first step, all the corrupt and tainted among its ranks, all of them. The costly Zondo Commission, whose findings the ANC accepted, by the way, has told the nation who should be prosecuted and who should be further investigated because of the role they played in state capture. For me, the task cannot be easier for the ANC. The names of the people whom Zondo fingered should not be on the parliamentary and provincial lists. None of them. If you kept all of them out of the list, the people will begin to see that we were ready to go back to our original values. But I tell you, if we are able to do this, it doesn't seem to be very difficult. Remove them, you know who they are. Don't take them to court, the NPA will do that. Just make sure they're not on the list until they have cleared their names. It's a pact I believe we should make with society.
Otherwise, the ANC would be handing its majority to other parties and to lose its, not just lose its power, but lose its moral authority. Since then, I can see now that a growing sense of frustration that didn't seem to be getting any response. Now, Roger Jardine has been talking to you, obviously. He said how much he respects you and he's seeking wisdom. Listening to his speech at the launch, even though there are many skeptics who have reservations about whether this is just another rinse and repeat type operation that happened to cope in 2008, 2009, the DA failing in its marriage with Dr. Mampele Rampele. It was hard not to be impressed by Roger Jardine's speech. It came from a person who really did seem to have something of a resonance with many of the things that I know that you have been very concerned about, and many other people in the ANC that I know. And I recall you telling me soon after we became friends that you had made a deliberate decision upon returning to South Africa from exile not to take a political role, and rather to serve the country as a conscientious civil servant, which you've done with distinction. Nobody can really argue with your track record, from Sandparks with Home Affairs and with Technology Unit and Latin State. Have you reconsidered? Are you now looking to play a political role? To come out and say, okay, I'm going to put myself up for office?
Thanks very much. I've always had a relationship, not very close, but a relationship with Roger, Mr. Jardine. And when I was told that he was going to resign, actually, his chairmanship of First Round and throw his hat in the political ring, he asked me at a certain time, what do you think? What do you think about that? And my question was, yeah, why not? You have the background, you have the pedigree. You've been away for quite a while from the political scene. But I'm afraid you're coming in a little too late if you are angling for the 24 elections. We talked about Mzansi, which has really been working hard and reaching out to young people and doing what I thought always, and I still think is a great thing. For me, I welcome parties, even as an ANC person, who act like Mzansi. I support the cause of Mzansi, for starters. But I was saying, they've been at it now for 18 months, 2 years, and I understood that when the poll was taken around their recognition, it was something like under 2%. I said, we are not more than 10 months to the elections. I don't know what chance you have to do this. And the impact of coming in, whatever your credentials, which are very impressive. I mean, he is a person who was not just a DG in a very, technical department, but also went to Kagiso Trust, which was an NGO, which is an NGO. well, then went to the media place, I think, Prime Media and so on. But I liked the fact that his integrity was always beyond question. When this scam by the construction companies, when they colluded to fix the price, he was CEO of Avenge. And he's the only one that I'm aware of who took action and said, this is wrong. And I think some people were expelled as a result of that. So many construction companies took the view that, they ducked and dived. I think people who are involved in the competition commission will tell you how difficult it was for them to admit that. He admitted, which I thought this is good for integrity. Then the first run thing, which is some. So I thought a person with this kind of track record, is not looking for money. Sometimes it's said people go into politics in order to do that. He said he always wished to play a role in politics. But my advice at the time was, I think it's late. You cannot possibly hope to make an impact and become a president. It's clear that you wanted to become president. At which point, by the way, the issue of linking up with another political party came up. Would it be Mzansi? It's two of you, 2% and 1%. Doesn't go very far, whatever the good credentials of the two parties are. And there is a party that I really don't want to even name, which was a no-no for him. That left the DA, actually, as a party that they could consider. And again, the problem was, the perception is that the DA, the strong points, let me start with. The good thing about the DA would be that they have at least 25% following. So that would give you a big boost if there were commonalities between what you want to do and the Democratic Alliance. The downside with the Democratic Alliance is that they have this history of working with black people, and for whatever reason, it's been very unstable. Mampela Rampele, Mose Maimane, Herman Mashaba. So what you don't want, this is advice that's being given by me, is to go in as Roger with his wonderful credentials, but with no constituency at all. It would be very important to find a way of going to hit the stumps, campaign, and maybe your other attributes would come in handy, so that your smallish group would convince people in the DA, because really the DA is not likely ever to run this country. Good as their performance has been, unless they really start having a broader, the demographics need to improve. It is still perceived as a very white organization. Never mind that they've recruited at lower levels. They've got a lot of black people, as in colored and Indian and African. So the possibility of that should be looked at. So that might help, and so on. So I said, that might help you, sir. And so
Well, yeah, and which of course is almost like as a consultant to say, look, I've got some moral authority, I've got some life experience. How can I use this for the benefit of this country as a whole?
Oh, I've no apologies at all about that. This was, I wasn't going to say, I'm a member of the ANC. I can't advise you how to. They're not coming in. If they're coming in to dislodge the ANC, the ANC will be dislodgeable because of its deeds. But if somebody enters the fray with fresh ideas, with a different perspective, and the perspective is acceptable, the more the merrier, although you need to limit these people. So, I have no qualms at all about playing the role that I played.
Well, let's talk about what Susan Boyson said was a bit of a backhanded compliment, that the public statement made by Fikile Mbulula saying that you had taken a bribe join this change starts now. Now, when people resort to those sort of tactics, it says something about their own lack of integrity. It's deflection. And I say this from my experience of now working with whistleblowers, now several of them, who they always get all sorts of ad hominem type attacks. Now, this is what Fikile Mbulula said. He said, the change starts now, are on a mission to bribing ANC veterans. The names Mavuso Msimang and Murphy Morobe have been dropped. We don't know if it's true, but we know that Msimang has left. We are hearing that these people are being given a lot of money because this thing of theirs that they've started, for it to have credence, it must have people with struggle credentials. So that is what they do. They're forming a lot of political parties to defeat the ANC. They put a lot of money to support this project. Roger Jardine is a project. We know that, and that project will be defeated. Now, that's what he said. He has now, by the way, said that he is not going to give an
apology because there is no accusation of Dr. Mavuso Msimang has been bribed. There is none of such in our articulation yesterday, and as a result, there will be no apology. Secondly, it is normal in a position of Secretary General, you can be compared to stalwarts and forebears of the ANC at any given point in time. To that, we are not allergic to it. We too are held accountable and we accept that will be compared. But like Fidel Castro said, history will absolve us.
How do you respond to him in that respect? Because you did have quite a sharp, stinging rebuke to him for what he did, and it put him on terms.
Yeah, let me explain this. My name mentioned in that context, in that regard, of they are looking for credible people, I think that you say, from the ANC, Mavuso, and so on. You know, the number of sympathies that I've received, or, you know, please ignore what Mbulula is saying. Listen, we like you, we trust you. Do not be worried about whatever he said. What he said had the effect of telling his audience there and wherever else that Mavuso is one of the people who are either about to be bribed or who are being considered for bribery, and he mentions my name. So I'm saying to you, for the first time, people said, "Man, please ignore him. You are not bribable. You know these guys and so on." So to be technical here and say he never said they've bribed him and so on is really totally irrelevant. That statement has put me in a very bad light among very many people. People have been asking, "Are you going in there, and are they paying you money?" I really don't take his. It's an excuse that is implausible. I mean, I don't know. I want this thing. I asked in the video. I do want to plead with Mbulula. And in fact, I demand that he should retract these accusations against me. They are libelous. He should do so soon. Actually, I think, in fact, it is a friendly request, but it has to happen and happen soon. Without the comments that he made, there would be nobody saying to me, "Hey, sorry, man, you know, how are you surviving? How are you, are you okay? Please ignore what Mbulula is saying."
Yes.
So the impression that was given to people was that I am living this thing at the ANC. I've resigned already. And having resigned, you know, it lends credence to the claim that I'm out there to to fulfill the bribe, so on.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I have some experience on the issue of defamation.
Yes.
And I'm struggling to stifle a chuckle, because if you were to win, you would have to somehow prove that his comments and allegations had harmed your reputation. But it would seem to me, from what you're telling me, that has rather enhanced it. So it's really backfired badly on him.
I'll tell you what happened, and I'm not really being falsely modest about this. If that letter that I had sent, my resignation letter, had not been circulated, if the ANC did not have the problems that it's been having in terms of service delivery, association with corruption, and so on, I became an overnight star. Mavuso holds no position in the ANC. Yes, I accept. I have been constantly saying that we should not be, we must expose corruption. We should be ethical and so on. Yes, but the stature that has developed to the extent that this thing is trending. Is that what they call it?
Yes.
Has everything to do. They've given me a stature that I didn't really have. Yes, I think a lot of people did respect me. I know that. That's why I'm talking about false modesty. But the extent to which people reacted to this was, I mean, they stabbed themselves with their. It is a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, well, that's about being not just strategic, but also being highly ethical in your approach. Ultimately, that will withstand any attack. But two very important issues I want to round off with. If Fikile Mbulula and the ANC are ready to do that and use those kind of highly, I won't just call them mischievous, but actually counter-revolutionary sabotage efforts, it tells me that when we look at the ANC, we need to understand that behind the scenes, when we start peeling away the layers, there is what one of my friends calls a thugocratic machine at work. There is a criminal enterprise that's running things. And they've got the levers on power. That's why they are retarding every effort to bring prosecution. And I had a rather unsavory run-in with the Deputy Minister John Jeffries over the delay in protecting whistleblowers. And of course, it's almost like so obvious. Well, the reason that they are taking so long is because it would be very bad for business, for that thugocratic machine, if we had whistleblowers confidently protected, supported, being able to testify, to develop a culture of whistleblowing. And I can't see us dealing with corruption any other way other than to get that truth. So the point is, though, it's the whistleblower issue. Do we not need now to put in place mechanisms to ensure that the election next May, as it's likely to be, isn't going to be rigged and stolen? What can we do to establish a surveillance or a monitoring process? Let's rather use that term. Surveillance has other connotations. A monitoring process, almost to call people to be, in a sense, voluntary whistleblowers, to be deployed at all stations, give them some training, give them some education as to know exactly what to look for, and some mechanism like we had in the elections 30 years ago, where we had the monitoring directorate that had international people coming. There was all sorts of checks and balances to make sure that that election wasn't stolen. And look how close it came to disaster. Are we not seriously at risk now of our state to not just now be captured, but to be pushed into the abyss of failure by that thugocratic machine that's trying to basically call the shots?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I have no particular expertise on how the whistleblowing thing should be tackled. It's very, very depressing. It's very that people have died already, with Jokoran. And many others. It's, you have received people complaining about how when they raised issues, they were fired from their organizations. There are instances that I really don't want to politicize too much. You know, if people who challenge wrongdoing in an organization take a stand and they end up having to leave the organization because they are not being protected, and they have no access to the authority that would listen to them and preempt whatever action or act on the complaint and maybe initiate a discussion that would ensure that such activities continue taking place. I have not seen that. I think that that's really one of the problems where about this laxity. I can't impute a motive that there is this thug across the, I don't know how to, that you talk about. But I really think that whistleblowers are right now very exposed. So many of them, there are examples of so many of them, who are turfed out of their jobs and really because they were doing the right things. It's right now, people say, hey, you're very brave to do this. Fortunately, I'm not in an organization and no one will cost me a job. There are many people who would be as outspoken as I am if they did not fear that they would end up victims. They would try and raise this internally in the organization, and they won't do it. They won't even begin, given the experiences that that we've seen in South Africa. Just too many people who raised issues of corruption, ethical practices by members of the organization have lost their jobs.
They have. But see, I'm using that now as an argument to, in a sense, ventilate my intuition. And I'm just asking you, what does your intuition tell me? Are we facing the risk of a stolen election next year?
Hey, man, you know...
Because if the ANC are prepared to go to the, shall we say, if the thugocratic regime or machine that's basically got hold of all the people that have any discretion and exercise, if they've got hold of them, they're going to now lose power. It's not the ANC is losing power, the thugocratic machine's losing power. So they are going to look to make sure that they somehow either start looking ways of corrupting the new movements and buying them off and co-opting them, which all then brings us back to, for me, the abiding concern is the state of the rule of law and our criminal justice system.
A number of people have said to me that the ANC cannot lose these elections. Not because they will have got the numbers. Somebody was suggesting that the ANC would not allow itself to lose the elections. So by hook or by crook, they would do that. I really hope that intuition, I hope that suspicion is not correct. But there is a need to really make sure that the monitoring that takes place when elections take place, you don't need outsiders. They are welcome. They should be welcome to monitor elections if you're really comfortable and squeaky clean about this. There really is a need. I shudder to think that anybody would actually intervene surreptitiously or in some manner to stop there. I'm not saying I'm ruling it out. But to ensure that that doesn't happen, it is absolutely, really absolutely important that a fair election, fair and just, what they normally say, is carried out, is achieved next year. It really, that would be the end of the what prestige, what reputation we still have as a country. You know, people say the judiciary is there to support the free media is there. If the political side is collapsing or wobbly and becoming unstable, we are at least safe as long as just the justice things happen. So that has to continue to be protected. I've seen people attacking the judiciary, by the way, in a manner that may not be criminal, but that's really worrying. I don't want to go to my constitution is appropriate or not. I still say I've seen so many cases where the Constitution intervenes on behalf of the poor people. Like when politicians and business people go into the mining things, I've seen judges saying, no, this cannot. They've won cases against strong people thanks to the independence and the humanity, humaneness of the judges. So all of that must be lined up, well, to ensure really that we have a clean, squeaky clean election. That would be the saddest day for some.
I get that. The problem is that it's only through civil litigation that we've made those gains.
Yes.
Not through the criminal litigation. This is the concern we have. I mean, when Bazuka Khadebe was shot and killed 7.5 years ago.
I'm aware of that, yes.
I asked Colonel Frank Dutton, what do we do? Now, he was a former head of the Scorpions. He said, John, don't trust the criminal justice system. Now, this was 2016. We're still in deeply in capture. He said, use a civil litigation strategy, which in a sense, when I got the defamation slap suit, paradoxically, that became some way of using civil litigation to keep the pot boiling and to keep things alive. And we've now since won that. Yes. So the point is, it's only civil litigation, which then leads to the critique that it's NGOs, middle-class people with access to resources that can do these sorts of things. I'm concerned, as I know you are. What about the poor? I mean, they don't have that sort of access. They are marginalized. They're not just excluded by the economy. They're basically abandoned by the economy. And it all seems to be now what's happening in the cities and what we can do in the courts.
Sure, but I do want to say, I totally agree with you. And I've defended the Constitution. But I think its weakness, and it is a really strong weakness, is that the person in the street, for the person in the street, justice in South Africa is just unaffordable, too expensive. You can't have somebody who has been treated unjustly, criminally so, comfortably go and challenge this without knowing that it's a hopeless case because people who've got money would stress it. There's something that needs to be done in that area. And also, there's been this thing said about the Zondo Commission having concluded its work. It's more than a year now, and so on. And with very few prosecutions of high-profile people. Those things lead credence to the allegation that, the powerful can protect themselves, or is the NPA captured? I wouldn't even want to go in that direction. I know it was, what's the term they use? It was not, it was... and so, but the time has to come when to restore the credibility, to ensure the credibility of the justice system is not harmed, that high-profile cases are prosecuted and people are seen to go to jail if they're found guilty and so on. So my defense of the justice system is not uncritical. And I absolutely agree. Talk about the middle class. Maybe one is blinded by the fact that I could scrounge something and ensure that the poor people, the really poor, are at the mercy of I don't know what.
It is, and I mean, I feel uncomfortable about the fact that here I am a white middle class male. I can do these things because of my relative privilege.
Sure.
But as a social worker, I'm meant to work myself out of a job.
Sure.
I'm wanting to see ordinary people find their voice. Yeah. And what happens when they do find their voice and they object to mining rights and all the rest?
Yes.
They get killed.
Yeah.
And then the criminal justice system is now 70. Colonel Frank Dutton told me that in 2016. We're now in 2023. Still no prosecution for the Bazooka's murderers, let alone the others that have come about. But let me finish on a more philosophical note. An intriguing thought occurred to me because I'm busy looking at the history in South Africa in the 80s and how there was this move under P.W. Botha to try and bring about change through the tricameral parliament and all the
Yes.
rest. And to co-opt coloureds and Indians into this whole system to maintain effectively white privilege, excluding blacks, and then we had the whole UDF and all the rest. Frederick van Zyl Slabbert shocked his own party and everyone else when he announced that he was resigning from the Member of Parliament as a leader of opposition. And it occurred to me that is there not a parallel between you resigning from the ANC and what Frederick van Zyl Slabbert did? And can we perhaps take some heart from what then happened? I know Helen Suzman was appalled, and he got a lot of criticism for the fact that he had basically done this. And she took a long time, I think, to forgive him for that. Yeah. However, I do see, with the benefit of hindsight, it led to the founding of IDASA. It led to the opening up. It led to all sorts of things. Enabling for you to come home from exile yourself, because the way was now paved for people like you to come home and make your contribution. So I'm thinking that is there not history repeating itself in some ways? Do you see yourself as playing a catalytic role for something that really will shift foundations to the point where we can actually start seeing things getting better?
If I had even a fraction of the power to do that, I would throw myself into it. Believe you me, again, I don't think I have the stature of, and say he was a leader of a party. And so he had a constituency, he had influence, he was listened to. I don't have that. Let me tell you what I do. I mentioned in my resignation statement, in some of the interviews, that really it is important that good governance is enforced, that we achieve good governance in South Africa. And really, if there is any role I could play in that, I would throw myself into that. And I would actively, if what you are asking about is something that I would consider or savor or look forward to doing, yes, I would. I just am sufficiently realistic about my influence at the moment. How you get that, the idea of what I'll say something here about neoliberalism, the right, the white monopoly capital, and so on. The truth is that, right now, our country really requires a government that's going to function and look after the interests of poor people. I don't know that the people who decry white monopoly capital have also looked at how much they've done for the poor people. We've got things that I raise in my resignation letter. The poor who are not under white monopoly capital, where the government is not under white monopoly capital, has actually seriously neglected the poor. It has. The instances of that happening are innumerable. So I think if you got people who got involved in the change that is required so that we don't head towards this precipice that we all see coming. People talk about a failed state. It's not failed. They say, I don't know by definition what needs to happen for the state to be called failed. But it is a failed state to very many people. If you've got more than 55% of the people classified as living before the poverty datum line, it's not under white monopoly capital government. We are in charge. So to warn people that if they collaborate with people who maybe for different reasons, like wanting to ensure that their investments in South Africa are protected, that they continue to make money, but in the process of doing that, they provide the relief that is not in existence now. I think it's time we judge that. It's ideology is important. When we started talking here, I heard you talking about neoliberalism and so on. I think those are things we must guard against. But on the ground right now, with a government that has for 30 years been not white monopoly capital, but which had a responsibility to look after the interests of the people who haven't achieved that, I wouldn't shout too much about people who seek ways of collaborating with people who may have resources, provided they don't sacrifice the principle, their own principle, that if you gave us this money, what we will do, otherwise we don't need your money, is make sure that ABC happens, like issues of affirmative action. I really think it's been miscarried. But in principle, you have to have that. The people who have been running on the treadmill for hundreds of years and others left out. You must be very careful if you don't support the idea of getting people who would find it extremely difficult because of historical exclusion to get into the economy and play a role. You'll really end up with a very unstable country which has got white people at the top and others at the bottom. So I think I talked to a DA person about this, some DA people. They said actually what they disagree with, and they pulled out their documents, that shows that their policy is not against it, but it is, and when they talk about merit, I got to understand. They say they don't believe in affirmative action but merit. Well, they actually seem to say Mavuso must not get a tender because he's black if he's already middle class and somewhere. So the criteria that need to be developed for them to support this thing, I don't know what they've done in the provinces where they're in charge, would have to make sure that the social equity is realized.
Well, Mavuso, I want to maybe ask if I can come back and talk with you with one of my whistleblower clients, because the horrifying thought occurred to me as I'm looking into the history of the 80s and realizing how certain key bits of legislation were the cornerstones of apartheid, like the Group Areas Act, etc. The cornerstone of the African National Congress, a reconstruction and development process, was supposed to be affirmative action, which they chose to call broad black economic empowerment and then broad-based black economic empowerment. The whistleblower story that I've recently uploaded, which you might not have had a chance to look at, I'd ask you to look at it. Here was a man, Patrick Maduna, who was basically taken as part of a group that was supposed to be an empowerment project for black people who were drivers in one of the corporates, formed a fronting organization claiming to be BEE to improve the credentials of Shell and Barloworld in their BEE rating. Blew the whistle on it because he was a member of represented the workers on the trust.
Yes.
And they would never show financial statements and all the rest. He drives around with this car, has got a bullet hole in the back because he blew the whistle on it and is still in fear of his life for what's happened there. Now, the point I'm making here is that Patrick Maduna's story shocked me into realizing that BEE was supposed to be the cornerstone of transformation. Look what it's turned into if it's now used precisely as an instrument for the dispensing of patronage, which seems to have been what this whole thing was really all about, because those workers that were formed and put together as an entity never got anything from the benefits of that trust. They were employed and they were basically treated, as he says it in the interview, he says they treat us as idiots, as if we just have no minds.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about that because and I'm still processing it. That's why I'm saying I wanted to come back and talk with you, because it's left me feeling absolutely gobsmacked. Yeah. And of course, he reported to the Hawks, he reported to the BE Commission, he reported in all sorts of areas, including to Shell Global. The criminal justice system was so slow in prosecuting this. I now had to put out a call for a bulletproof vest for him so that he doesn't get killed. Now, I don't want to, I hope I'm not sounding, I'm trying to over-dramatize this, Mavuso, but I am really so concerned about the sideshows that go on in politics, whereas in actual fact, you've got this phagocratic regime that's busy still playing its cards behind the scenes, anonymous, invisible, that really is still rigged the system. I'm saying this now because I know my white life matters a bit more. And I can say this, but it horrifies me to think that I've got to do this.
Yeah. I think let's find time and talk about this. There is absolutely no doubt that empirical evidence that we have now shows that even the broad-based economic empowerment program it really needs to be retooled. The person who deserves to benefit from this is still not benefiting. I want to say again, RDP, what a pity that it didn't work, and then it was replaced. I'm just saying that people must accept that you have to empower, you have to affirm, you have to give the opportunity to the ordinary person, not to a Mavuso. I think it was so much easier for me if I tried to form up a group and we go to white company, and they would, because we're black and we're historically disadvantaged, be easy for them to have us there, co-opt us in one way or another. And that's been happening a lot, by the way. If you give a politician, for instance, a board position on your company, and these are the people who are supposed to make decisions about how companies should contribute to the economy, how they should be taxed. I mean, that actually should not be, it shouldn't be allowed. Not if you are in policy.
Well, this is a fast-moving story with a lot of heat being generated, but not a great deal of light. Well, after we switched off the cameras, Mavuso and I chatted for another 40 minutes or so. That conversation's not for public consumption, but I don't think he will mind me saying that Luthuli House were then calling him incessantly, desperate to have him come in and see if they could come and help Fikile Mbulula and himself find each other. Well, that meeting happened later in the afternoon, and no doubt other media will cover what happened there. And it's better that the established media do carry the story from here on, so I can stay in my lane as a social worker and justice monitor. Well, in the light of that conversation and everything else that's been happening in the country, I think I should start calling myself a justice and peace monitor. Because if you scratch down to the core of what helps me get up in the morning, it's really to seek the things that make for peace. And I've elaborated that on other videos on my channel, and if you can subscribe to them, you can try and trace something of what floats my boat. I intended this to be a peace-building intervention, and I came away thinking that I'm not going to be getting a Christmas card from Fikile Mbulula, I think, this year, as I'm clearly not neutral and very much on Mavuso's side. And even more so, having listened to the man, deeply hurt by what was really a shameful manipulation, someone who really deserves better. Well, looking at the hopeful side, Mr. Mbulula said that at the upcoming NEC meeting of the ANC, they are going to be fully discussing Mavuso's concerns and the concerns of many others in the ANC Veterans League. So let's see what happens there, and, well, maybe in fairness, so let me give Fikile Mbulula the opportunity to explain in his own words how he sees things developing on that front here on.
And we're saying to all our members, wherever they are, let us focus on the task of renewal of the ANC. And let us focus on the task of living up to the expectation of our people. And we will never stop to articulate this. And members of the ANC must talk to each other directly. And our veterans, which we draw counsel and political direction from, we avail ourselves to their counsel and to their engagement all the time. There is no anti-veterans campaign. We regard ourselves as much as we can be in leadership. That leadership comes from those who came before. And there are many in the African National Congress. All we say is that let us not work to decampaign the movement, because we are available to be engaged as we are engaged, even by the structure of the Veterans League. Genuine things that they've raised with the movement. Issues of integrity, commission in relation to the Zondo Commission, those matters are top on our agenda. As a matter of fact, this coming week and in our last NEC meeting, which will be celebrating the anniversary, the first year in office since Nazareth, will consider these matters in relation to matters being taken to the disciplinary committee of the ANC. And generally, not to be lax in dealing with members affected by acts of corruption in the organization. And we will work with our veterans, and we are going to roll out a huge program on these matters to address them in the organization. Sometime during the week, as I've met with the Veterans League today, we will address the media on our engagement and the fact that the ANC is with its veterans and support its veterans.
Okay, let's see what happens. And let's see what President Ramaphosa has to say, because really this is about leadership in the ANC. Now, you will see a link appearing now to another dialogue on the same subject with another friend of mine, Richard Pithouse. I would urge you to budget another hour or so to listen carefully to that one, as it will hopefully give a more credible installment of someone who aspires to be a peace builder. We talk about the significance of Mavuso's resignation and the emergence of Roger Jardine's movement, but it's a bit confusing because it was recorded before the launch of Change Starts Now and before the fallout between the Secretary General and Mavuso, and before I had sat down with Mavuso to talk this thing through. So it's a little bit dated. Well, Richard and I thought that, well, let's redo the whole conversation and bring it up to date with what we now know to be true, rather than having to work from assumptions. But I simply don't have the time to do another iteration of that. So please forgive me if upon watching the dialogue with Richard, it seems like you've stumbled into another episode of The Matrix. My original plan was to let Mavuso watch this conversation before we sat down, but alas, the Secretary General's insinuations about him having been bribed eclipsed all that. But rather than can it, Richard and I both feel that some very important issues emerged in that conversation, which needs a lot more dialogue. When I was at university, one of my professors of science of religion said, you need to have three roles being played in any movement that has value-based interests. You need to have your priests, your prophets, and your pragmatists. Priests look at the past and traditions of the past. Prophets look to the future, and the pragmatists try and hold them together in the present. And the point he made is that you have to have all three, and they will always be in some sort of tension with each other. And that's what leads to an organization remaining viable. If you try and silence one voice at the expense of the others, that organization will fail. So hopefully in the new year we can get back to that conversation. I'm really eager to have a chat with my long-standing friend Mark Hayward to see what he makes of this whole thing. Let's see what emerges. Well, finally, to lift your spirits and in keeping with this festive season, I'm going to play out with a performance of poetry and praise by another new friend that I met only 3 or so weeks ago at the Constitutional Court. She's an Mbongi, a praise singer. Her name's Jessica Mbangeni, who has an enterprise she calls Kwa Ntu Afrocentric Designs at the Grand Bazaar in Oriental Plaza. We got to know each other because we were at Concord to hear argument about the succession dispute in the Amampondo Nation. Well, Advocate Jeff Budlander had very convincingly represented Queen Masabuza Sekau and her daughter Princess Mzizwe Sekau, and after the hearing we were in the lobby and we were treated to this wonderful recital by Jessica after the royal family had handed some gifts over to their legal team. And this has been a long-running thing which has gone now over 10 years. And I've been quite involved in that and written a book about it, which tries to give us a little bit of context for those of us who really have no clue about how the traditional leadership system works and should work. Of course, the headline news is all about the AmaZulu kingship dispute, but it seems likely that when the Concord hands down judgment in the Amampondo dispute, hopefully before the elections next year, it will doubtless provide some authoritative legal precedent to also resolve the AmaZulu dispute. And we will then all live happily ever after. So wishing my Christian friends a happy Christmas, and all my friends from other faith traditions, I invite you to join us in hope that when 2024 comes around, we will indeed in this country see the things that make for peace.
Keep on digging deep at the height of prestigious knowledge and wisdom. Uproot the deadly spray poison of ignorance and lack of knowledge that leads to this destruction. Let us all come in arms, carrying the synergies of our great ancestors and build the Africa that we want to see. I am not an African because I was born in Africa, but I'm an African because Africa was born in me. The people without the knowledge of their culture, their traditions and their history of origins are like the tree without your roots. Today, it feels good to be an African because we are the embodiment of humanity. Ubuntu, I am because you are. You are because I am. Isizwe sabomoto, siyakumanyana, sakhane, sakheke, kube hutu, kube khosi, kube hele, to the great generations that we'll be proud of. For we are our ancestors' modesty.